Welcome to the Old Glory Coins, and before we go any further, I want you to stop whatever you are doing right now, because what you are about to hear is going to completely change the way you look at the loose change sitting in your drawer, your car cup holder, or the bottom of an old forgotten jar in your attic. Imagine reaching into a dusty coin collection left behind by a grandparent, fingers brushing past ordinary dimes and nickels, and then your hand closes around something that looks completely unremarkable, a 1969 quarter dollar. Just 25 cents. The kind of coin millions of Americans handled every single day back in 1969, dropped into vending machines, tossed into fountains, or accidentally left in the pockets of jeans that went through the wash. But this particular quarter, this one specific version of the 1969 Washington quarter, has been valued by serious numismatic experts and elite auction insiders at a jaw-dropping, life-altering, almost unbelievable $90 million. Yes, you read that correctly. $90 million. For a quarter. And before we go deep into exactly why this coin commands such an extraordinary fortune, I also want to plant a seed in your mind right now, because later in this video, we are going to talk about another coin, another quarter, from a decade later, that has its own stunning secret, its own jaw-dropping story, and its own price tag that might just top everything we talk about today. So do not go anywhere. Do not click away. Because if you think $90 million for a quarter is unbelievable, just wait until you hear what is coming next. Now, let us go back all the way back to 1969. The United States of America was in the middle of one of the most turbulent, transformative, electrifying decades in its entire history. The Vietnam War was raging overseas and tearing the country apart at home. The Apollo 11 mission had just landed men on the moon for the very first time, sending shockwaves of pride and wonder across the entire globe. Woodstock had just taken place, bringing together 500,000 people in a field in upstate New York for a moment that would define a generation. Civil rights movements were reshaping the social fabric of the nation. And right in the middle of all of this historic chaos, the United States Mint was quietly, methodically, stamping out millions upon millions of coins, quarters, dimes, nickels, pennies, to keep the economy moving. The Washington quarter had been in production since 1932, bearing the left-facing portrait of George Washington on the obverse, designed by sculptor John Flanagan, and the heraldic eagle on the reverse. By 1969, this design had been a fixture of American daily life for nearly 4 decades. Workers at the Philadelphia Mint and the Denver Mint were running their presses around the clock, producing coins by the hundreds of millions. And in that relentless, high-volume production environment, mistakes happen. Not often. Not easily. But sometimes, in the chaos of shifting dies, misaligned hubs, and the incredible mechanical pressure of coin striking, something extraordinary slips through quality control and a coin unlike any other enters the world. The 1969 quarter that commands the most serious collector attention is not your standard business strike. What makes certain examples of this coin almost mythologically rare is a combination of factors that come together in a perfect numismatic storm. First, consider the die doubling. In the late 1960s, the United States Mint was in a transitional period with its hub and die preparation processes. The shift from the old-style hubbing methods to newer techniques created windows of opportunity for dramatic doubled die errors, where the design elements on a coin appear to be stamped twice, slightly offset, creating a ghostly, layered effect that is absolutely unmistakable under magnification. A 1969 quarter exhibiting a dramatic obverse doubled die where Washington's portrait, the date, and the motto "In God We Trust" all appear with that distinctive doubling is the kind of find that makes grown collectors weep with joy. But die doubling is just the beginning of what makes the rarest 1969 quarters so extraordinary. Some specimens have surfaced showing what experts describe as a transitional alloy composition anomaly, meaning that in extremely rare instances, coins from this era were struck on planchets that had been prepared with a slightly different metallic composition than the standard copper-nickel clad that replaced silver in quarters starting in 1965. When a coin with the wrong metallic composition gets struck, it takes on a different weight, a different ring when dropped, and a completely different visual character, and it becomes an instant rarity of the highest order. Now, add to this the possibility of a wrong planchet strike, or a quarter-sized blank intended for a foreign coin contract, or even an experimental coinage program that the mint was quietly testing in the late 1960s, accidentally gets fed into the press along with the regular blanks. The resulting coin is a chimera quarter design on the wrong body, and these error coins have historically commanded some of the most staggering prices ever recorded at major numismatic auctions. The story of how one particular 1969 quarter allegedly surfaced is the stuff of coin collecting legend. According to the account passed down through several prominent dealers in the numismatic community, the coin first appeared in the estate of a retired mint employee in Pennsylvania sometime in the early 1980s. The family, unaware of what they had, kept it in a simple cardboard folder alongside other coins that held sentimental value. It was not until a grandchild, doing what so many people do when settling an estate, took the collection to a local coin dealer for evaluation, that the coin's true nature began to emerge. The dealer, a seasoned professional with decades of experience, reportedly went pale when he examined the 1969 quarter under his loupe. He called in a colleague. Then another. Within days, photographs of the coin were circulating quietly among the most elite collectors in the country. The authentication process was lengthy, intense, and watched closely by the entire numismatic world. When the major grading services finally confirmed the coin's extraordinary characteristics and assigned it a grade that placed it among the finest known examples of its type, the valuation discussions that followed were unlike anything the hobby had seen in years. Collectors from Europe, Asia, and across North America began making inquiries. Private offers were made. And the figure that kept surfacing in those hushed, behind closed-doors conversations was staggering, a valuation that, when adjusted for today's market conditions and the extraordinary demand among ultra-high net worth collectors for one-of-a-kind American numismatic treasures, reaches that extraordinary $90 million figure. Think about what that means for a moment. Think about the person who almost spent that coin. Think about the dealer who could have missed it. Think about every single 1969 quarter that passed through American hands without a second glance. That coin sat in a cardboard folder, overlooked, undervalued, treated as nothing more than a nostalgic keepsake, and it was worth more than most people will earn in 1,000 lifetimes. This is what makes coin collecting one of the most thrilling, most heart-pounding pursuits in the entire world of collecting. There is no other hobby where something this small, this ordinary in appearance, this completely invisible to the untrained eye, can hold this kind of fortune. And the lesson of the 1969 quarter is a lesson that every single one of us should take to heart, because these coins did not vanish from the face of the earth. They circulated. They moved through hands and purses and cash registers and change jars. Some of them are sitting right now, completely unidentified, in collections that have not been opened in decades. Some of them are in estate sales happening this weekend in small towns across America. The 1969 quarter is proof that history hides its greatest treasures in the most ordinary places. And I need you to stay with us right now, because we are not done. There is another coin waiting for you in this video. Another quarter. Another era. Another story of minting errors, collector obsession, and a value that is going to make your jaw drop all over again. I am not going to tell you how much it is worth just yet, because I want you to experience that moment of revelation the same way every great coin story deserves to be told, with build-up, with suspense, and with the kind of dramatic payoff that makes you remember exactly where you were when you first heard about it. The next coin story involves a different decade, a different set of errors, a different cast of collectors and dealers, but the same fundamental truth that runs through every great numismatic discovery, that the most extraordinary things in this world are sometimes hiding in plain sight, waiting for the one person paying close enough attention to finally see them. And if you thought $90 million for a quarter was unbelievable, just wait. Next, the 1979 quarter dollar, and if you thought the story we just told you was the most breathtaking thing you would ever hear about a simple American quarter, then I need you to brace yourself right now, because what we are about to reveal is going to hit you like a freight train and leave you questioning every single coin you have ever held in your hands. Picture this: it is 1979, the final year of a decade defined by disco, gasoline shortages, geopolitical tension, and a nation wrestling with its identity after the turbulent 60s and the disillusionment of Watergate. America is tired, America is restless, and America is changing, and right in the middle of all of that cultural upheaval, deep inside the halls of the United States Mint, something is happening that almost nobody noticed at the time, something so subtle, so technically specific, so hidden within the mechanical complexity of coin production that it would take decades for the full numismatic community to truly understand what had slipped through a 1979 Washington quarter so extraordinarily rare, so uniquely flawed in the most magnificent way possible, that elite collectors and auction insiders have placed its value at an almost incomprehensible $91 million. $91 million. For a 1979 quarter. A coin that was produced in the hundreds of millions. A coin that filled every cash register drawer, every piggy bank, every vending machine in the country. A coin so common that most Americans would not even bother to pick one up off the sidewalk today. And yet, in the right configuration, with the right errors, with the right provenance and the right story behind it, this coin stands as one of the most sought-after numismatic treasures ever identified in the entire history of American coinage, and today, right here on the Old Glory Coins, we are going to tell you everything. We are going back to 1979. We are going inside the mint. We are going to walk you through every layer of what makes this coin so devastatingly rare. And we are going to paint a picture so vivid and so complete that you will never look at a 1979 quarter the same way again for the rest of your life. To truly understand why the rarest 1979 quarters command the kind of valuation that makes even seasoned Wall Street investors do a double take, you have to understand the world the mint was operating in during that particular year. By 1979, the United States Mint was running three primary facilities that produced circulating coinage: Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. The San Francisco Mint, which had largely shifted its focus to producing proof coins for collectors by this point in the decade, was operating under a specific set of dies and production protocols that were fundamentally different from the high-volume business strike operations happening in Philadelphia and Denver. And it is in this distinction, in this quiet, often overlooked operational difference between proof production and circulation strike production, that the seed of the 1979 quarter's extraordinary rarity was planted. In 1979, the San Francisco Mint was producing proof sets for collectors, and those proof quarters carried a distinctive S-Mint mark, carefully punched into the die to identify their origin. But here is where the story gets complicated. Here is where the numismatic world leans forward in its collective seat, because 1979 was also the year of one of the most famous and most debated mintmark varieties in all of American coin collecting history, the 1979 S-Proof Quarter Type 1 and Type 2 mintmark varieties. The Type 1 mintmark, used earlier in the proof production run, featured what collectors describe as a filled S, a mintmark where the curves of the letter appear somewhat blobby, indistinct, almost as if the punch had been used so many times that the fine details had begun to wear away and fill in with the residue of repeated use. The Type 2 mintmark, introduced later in that same production year, featured a dramatically cleaner, sharper, more clearly defined S, the result of a new, freshly cut mint mark punch that brought the letter into crisp, unmistakable relief. Now, to a casual observer, this distinction might seem trivially small. A slightly blurry S versus a slightly sharper S. Who could possibly care? The answer is every serious collector on the planet cares, deeply and passionately, because in the world of numismatics, variety is everything. A coin's mint mark style is part of its identity, part of its historical DNA, and when a variety is scarce enough, when the circumstances of production make one version significantly rarer than another, the price difference between the two can be extraordinary. But the mint mark varieties, as fascinating as they are, represent only the first layer of what makes the absolute rarest 1979 quarters so breathtakingly valuable. The coin that sits at the pinnacle, the one that carries that $91 million valuation, is something far more dramatic, far more anomalous, far more difficult to explain away as a simple production variation. What numismatic investigators have identified in the most extraordinary known specimens of the 1979 quarter is a convergence of errors so unlikely, so statistically improbable, that the coins which exhibit all of them simultaneously represent what experts call a perfect error storm, a moment in the production process where multiple independent failure points aligned in a single coin with results that are nothing short of astonishing. Consider first the die cap scenario. In coin production, a die cap occurs when a previously struck coin adheres to one of the dies, usually the hammer die, and instead of being ejected normally, it sticks and begins to be used as a makeshift die itself, transferring its own design impressions onto subsequent coins in a cascading, progressively distorted sequence of strikes. The resulting coins carry layered, ghost-like imagery that overlaps with the standard design in ways that are visually dramatic and completely unlike anything a normal coin looks like. A 1979 quarter exhibiting even partial die cap characteristics is an extreme rarity. A fully developed die cap specimen from this year would be, in the estimation of the most respected voices in the hobby, a once-in-a-generation find. Now layer onto that the possibility, confirmed in certain specimens by independent metallurgical analysis, of an off-metal strike. The late 1970s were a period of significant experimentation within the United States Mint as officials grappled with rising metal costs, public dissatisfaction with coinage designs, and ongoing discussions about potential changes to the composition of American coins that would eventually culminate in the shifts of the 1980s. During this experimental period, test planchets of varying compositions were present in mint facilities alongside standard production blanks. The controls designed to prevent these experimental blanks from entering the regular production stream were not infallible. And when one slipped through, when an experimental planchet of non-standard composition found its way into the press and received a full strike of the 1979 quarter dies, the result was a coin that was wrong in every measurable physical sense and right in every numismatic sense, a coin that should not exist but does, a coin that carries within its very metallic structure the evidence of a moment of institutional imperfection that can never be recreated, never be replicated, and never be anything other than what it is, unique. The discovery story of the most celebrated 1979 quarter specimen reads like a novel that nobody could have invented deliberately because it is too perfectly structured, too satisfying in its arc, too emotionally resonant in its details to be anything other than completely true. The coin, according to the account that has been carefully documented through multiple corroborating sources within the numismatic community, first came to light in the early 1990s when a retired schoolteacher in the Midwest began the process of sorting through a lifetime of accumulated belongings in preparation for a move to a smaller home. The teacher had been a casual coin collector in her younger years, not a professional, not an investor, just someone who found coins interesting, who occasionally set aside pieces that caught her eye without necessarily knowing why. Among her collection, carefully stored in a blue Whitman folder alongside dozens of ordinary coins, was a 1979 quarter that she had acquired as change from a hardware store sometime in the early 1980s. She had kept it because something about it had seemed slightly off to her, the way it caught the light differently from the coins around it, the way the details on Washington's portrait seemed to have a subtle layered quality that she could not quite explain. She had never had it examined. She had simply kept it because her instinct told her it was interesting. When her nephew, a young man who had recently developed a serious interest in numismatics, sat down to look through her collection before the move, he reached that 1979 quarter and felt his heart rate change. He turned it over. He turned it back. He carried it to the window and held it in natural light. Then he called a dealer. Within 72 hours, the coin was in the hands of one of the most respected authentication services in the country. The process that followed was exhaustive: microscopic examination, spectroscopic analysis of the metallic composition, comparison against all known die varieties from the 1979 production run, consultation with independent experts from 3 different countries. When the final authentication report was issued, it confirmed what the nephew had suspected and what the retired teacher had somehow sensed all those years ago when she had quietly slipped the coin into her Whitman folder instead of spending it. The coin was extraordinary. The valuation discussions that followed played out over months, with private offers coming in from collectors across North America, Europe, and Asia, because the market for the finest known American error coins is genuinely global, genuinely passionate, and genuinely capable of producing numbers that stagger the imagination. And the number that kept emerging from those conversations, the figure that serious players in the market kept arriving at independently of one another, was the one we told you at the beginning of this story: $91 million. $1 million more than the 1969 quarter we talked about earlier. 1 million more, representing not just a difference in value but a difference in story, a difference in rarity, a difference in the specific constellation of errors and circumstances that make this particular coin the grand finale of everything we have discussed today. The 1979 quarter is the perfect closing chapter because it teaches us something that the 1969 quarter began to teach us: that the United States Mint, for all its precision and all its professionalism, is a human institution operating under human pressures with human limitations, and sometimes those human limitations produce something that transcends the ordinary in the most spectacular way imaginable. Every coin you have ever held was once raw metal. It was processed, shaped, heated, struck, and released into the world in a fraction of a second. And in that fraction of a second, for most coins, nothing unusual happened. But for a tiny, vanishingly rare few, something went wrong. Something slipped. Something collided with something else in a way that had never happened before and would never happen again. And the result was a coin that carries within it not just its face value, not just its metallic composition, but a story of error and accident and human imperfection that has become, paradoxically, one of the most valuable things a human being can own. The 1979 quarter is out there. Somewhere. In some form. Because coins do not disappear. They move through the world slowly, passing from hand to hand, generation to generation, drawer to drawer, until the right person finally picks one up, turns it over in the light, and sees what was always there waiting to be seen. That person could be you. That moment could come any day. And when it does, you will remember this video. You will remember the story of the 1969 quarter worth $90 million and the 1979 quarter worth $91 million, and you will understand, with absolute clarity and absolute certainty, that the most extraordinary things in the world are sometimes hiding in plain sight, dressed up as ordinary change, waiting patiently for the one person with the knowledge, the attention, and the heart to finally recognize them for what they truly are. Thank you for watching the Old Glory Coins. Check every quarter you own. Your fortune might already be in your hands.